Hi, this is Scott from Classic Motors Workshop. Today we're going to be assembling a crank into this MGB motor. The mains are in, 3 of the 4 big ends are in. All the caps are here ready. The new shells for number 3 big end are here ready. The last thing that we need to do is these thrust washers have picked up. So we're going to, and they have no stamping on them, so we're going to measure them up and then find a new set of thrust washers to fit. And they measure a nice 2.34 millimeters. So now the fun is going to be to go through this box and to find a set of thrust washers that are close, that I can then put in and measure the end float. Right, okay, so next up we're putting the very last bearing shell in. Nice and tight, and we're getting our trusty old oil can. We're going to fill the, going to spray into the galleries, and then we're going to put some nice amount of oil. Alright, so now that we've finished on the main shells, we're now going to do the same on our little big ends. You may see that some of these big ends and main bearing shells have a few marks on them. This engine turned over once or twice before we noticed that there was an issue. And it hasn't hurt the shells at all, which is why we are reusing them, and they just show a little sign of wear. Right, now we're putting the crankshaft in. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to lift it, get it onto those 2 mains, big ends, then turn it over, then slide those ones into place, and boom, we're in. Nice and neat. Then we have measured up some thrust washers. We're going to slide them into place now, and we are then going to measure the end float with our trusty oil can. Sure that they're also nice and there we go, they slip nice and gently in. Just now we might need to bang it this side to get this one in. Yep, the thing we're going to need to do is we are going to need to match the end float. So for that, I'm going to need a feeler gauge, and we want to measure it between 4 and 5 thousandths of an inch. So if we come here, 0.2, there's 5 thou. As you can see, that is very small. And it's too tight. So let's go down and let's go one smaller and see if 4th thou goes. Because if it doesn't, that's 6. There we go, 4/1000ths of an inch. Which for those of you who work in metric is 0.1 of a millimeter. So it's small. And I'm going to just give this crank a little tap to get it to one side with the dead blow, so that it's moved over to one side, so we're going to get the full. And as you can see, it goes down part of the way, but it is a bit tight. Alrighty, so after going through the box of thrust washers and measuring them all up, and then taking the thinnest two and flattening them down a little bit, we now have as close to, damn it, 4/1000ths of an inch clearance, which will make the crank turn very happily. So now we can carry on assembling the top end. So to carry on further there, what we're going to do is we're going to start off with number 1 main. All right, and again we're going to turn the crank till we've got the oil galleries up, and then we can fill them with oil. Okay, now that we've got the crank turned with the oil galleries on 1 and 5 facing upwards, we can pump some oil into the galleries. And then give it a nice spread of oil. We take the number 1 main cap, which should be clean. Just give it a wipe on the edges. We oil the bearings. And with these MGB engines, which have got a nice tight fit down the sides of the block, we just put a bit of oil down the side. Otherwise it makes getting the bearing cap in quite tricky. What we want to do is we want to line it up as flat as possible and with the bolt holes as close as possible. These things like to pull inwards, so we line it up on the holes, and we take our freshly cleaned bolts that have gone through our cleaning machine, give them a nice run of oil so we can see where we're going. Once we've got that into place, we can then start to pull it down nice and evenly. For this, I like to use just a speed wrench There we go. That's number 1 done. Then we move on to the trickiest one of them all, being number 5. Number 5 is a lot of fun because it sits right over the back of the crankshaft, and it's got this nice oil cover, and it never likes to go in straight.
Kevin.
So, as you can see, we're busy lining it up, and it's tight. The bolts are not touching the not touching the thread section, so we're going to have to just gently tap her down. And for that, we don't use big hammers. We use a nice soft dead blow, just to help us get it down and lined up. And then the minute we can aha, there we can see they're starting to take. Then we can stop using that and start our process of tightening it down one little bit at a time. Right, so now we're going to fill these 2 oil galleries over here and here. We're going to oil down onto our number 2 and 3 bearing shells. And then we're going to put the big end caps on 2 and 3. And then we can then turn the motor over so we can do the oil galleries on the other side. As always, we work nice and clean. And when we assemble the caps, we always assemble tang to tang. So a little bit of oil on the threads. With our clean nuts that have been through our machine. Looking quite spiffy. And then, as you can see on this MGB, it uses these splines, spline fitting on the nuts. So we have a nice 1/2-inch tube socket with the correct spline, so it fits nicely and we don't have any problems. Following on from where we left off, now we've turned the crank 180 degrees and we're going to fill the galleries on the opposite side and give them a good coat of oil. Okay, as you can see, this main here feeds those 2 big ends. Right, so now we're ready to put on number 1. I'm just checking for my stamping. And again we go tang to tang.
Okay.
Radiator fluid.
Right, so all the big ends will get torqued to 45 Newton meters. I don't like to just torque them straight to 45. I like to torque them to a lower number first. So in this case, I'm going to torque them to 40 Newton meters and then go across and re-torque them back up to 45. So here we go.
You should be able to, I think, put your finger in there. Check where the thick, I don't know. Doesn't be in there. No, that. You can.
And there we go. That's how you put a crankshaft into an MGB.